All right, hello, everyone. So we are going to start the Facilities Committee meeting. Today is Wednesday, August 14th, and we're in room 54. So call of the roll. We are missing Supervisor Score, but everyone else is here. So approval of the previous meeting minutes. So we have printed out the June 24th. And Scott was going to bring up the July 22nd.
And
Yep, working.
Yep.
I'd like to apologize for missing last month's meeting.
Okay.
I was at the Dunn County Fair and I had 2 committee meetings
Oh,
and I went to the other one and forgot about this one.
okay. Well, we
So,
had
and-
quorum luckily.
Well, I know it, and I heard that you waited and I'm sorry for that.
That's all right.
Okay.
I so moved.
June and July meetings. Is there a second?
Here are the meetings for the July meeting, which was short and sweet.
Yeah.
Can everybody read it? Trying to make it bigger.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so the minutes are passed. Was there any public comment?
None that I know of.
Okay. So there's nothing placed at the request of the chair. And so then if we go to 6A, geothermal and solar project.
Hi. So this item, you'll also see that there's an action item later. I wanted to get this on here to start with. So this is the geothermal and solar project that we had talked about a little bit in a previous meeting. We have a representative, Jason, is it Cini? From Vergy, who's got a presentation. You have a copy of that as well, and he'll kind of walk you through what that looks like. So. Scott, can you?
Yep, absolutely. Thanks, Dan. Again, my name is Jason Steeney with Fairgy, Wisconsin, and here to kind of describe what our organization found from our energy study of the county facilities. I do have a technical representative with me today, Rory Stegman, who will be able to answer any technical questions that might come up during the presentation. So essentially, our table of contents today is to give you a synopsis of the opportunity as we found through our analysis, some of the attributes of the proposed project. We'll get into specifically the Inflation Reduction Act and how that would affect the proposed project that we're discussing today. And then performance contracting procurement, the specific type of procurement that we're discussing that's related to energy conservation measures, which our project would fall into. And then the scope of the project, we're looking specifically at a geothermal and solar solution. And we'll spend a little bit of time on the details of those projects. And then we'll finish with example timeline of what it would look like if we were to engage and implement a project. So going back to January of this year, our organization, Verigy, conducted an on-site analysis of the county's facilities. Prior to that, we did a full energy audit, looking at your utility bill usage and figuring out where your cost centers were inside of the county operations. So high level, what we found was that relatively speaking, the county's done a pretty good job of efficiency. From what we would anticipate for a county of this size, meaning the square footage that is encompassed in this county, we were actually about at the benchmark that we would look to see. What we did notice during our on-site audit, which Scott made known, was well known for the county, that the Judicial Center's HVAC system was past its useful life in a lot of respects and was due for conversion or replacement. So through that, we gathered data to see how a geothermal system might work in that facility. It would be similar to the geosystems that the county currently operates in the administration building and also the neighbors complex. Subsequently, from our energy study, we also noticed that your baseline energy rate is higher than a benchmark that we typically use to see if solar would be advantageous, meaning there would be a relatively short payback if you were to implement solar based on your current utility rates. So we modeled that also for the county. So we'll get into that a little bit here. So some of the high level attributes of why communities look at these type of solutions, specific to you working with Xcel Energy. We've seen quite dramatic fluctuations in energy rate changes year over year. Specifically over the last 4 years, through the Public Service Commission, we've seen rate changes that have been less than 1%, followed by years with 9–10% increases. There doesn't seem to be a way to predict more than 6 months out what that change is going to look like, which makes it very difficult to ascertain what your long-term energy costs are going to be, and also for budgeting. There's a relatively inexact model for how they come up with energy rates, and it becomes difficult to predict. So the nice thing is if we can lower your energy consumption, obviously the net impact becomes much less for the county. A big factor essentially in all of our projects today is the Inflation Reduction Act, which is $750 billion that's specific for energy related measures that can be utilized by public agencies. The unique thing about this program is it's a direct pay program for public agencies, which means that if you're a non-taxable entity, which obviously county government would be, you'll actually file a $0 tax return and receive a stimulus check back for the credited amount. It's a non-competitive grant, which means that as long as your project qualifies, you're guaranteed the money. So it's a really great way to help incentivize renewable energy projects. The solar panels themselves that we'll be discussing today have a 25-year life expectancy, which would stretch much longer than any type of financing program that you'd be looking at. Those panels will pay off twofold by the time they end their useful life. And the great thing about our solar programs is that we actually have a central operations center that monitors all of our solar installations across the country. It's out of the Indianapolis airport where we operate a microgrid, and we have access to see in real time the current energy flow of any of our installations. So touched on this prior, but so the Inflation Reduction Act again is unique from the standpoint that it does fund directly to government agencies. In the past, how we would work with grant programs essentially would be finding a third party to get a credit on behalf of a non-taxable entity, and then they would get a portion back. Is a rather convoluted setup. So here it's incredibly straightforward, and we can actually help you with the application process. That's part of our services. One other thing that's not noted here is we also work with local rebate programs. In this scenario, we would qualify for a focus on energy rebate, which we would also help you apply for and receive credit for. So the vehicle that we're describing today is performance contracting. Essentially, performance contracting is unique from the standpoint that the guarantees in place with these type of projects actually guarantee a return on investment. And what that means is we're able to, through the engineering process, is ascertain your actual cost of operation today as a benchmark, and then provide calculated returns from infrastructure changes. Essentially, what that means is if we have a baseline energy usage amount today, we make the changes to reduce your energy usage through these projects. What we're able to say is that's net savings will pay for the capital costs to implement the project. So in layman's terms, the project will be paid for within 15 years by the net savings that you'll see in your energy bill, combined with the grant and rebates that the project would qualify for. So the county is not exposed financially for the project. And I'll stop there. And is there any questions? I know it's a significantly different procurement model. Yes, sir.
Why wouldn't what you just said, why wouldn't the county be exposed? If this is an $8 million project and isn't there cost in acquiring $8 million?
Yeah, absolutely. So an $8 million project, what we're going to see is if that project was financed over 15 years, that on a monthly basis or annual basis, the county would save enough money to pay for that loan payment. So let's say it's $1 million. What we're saying is that over 10 years, you'll save $100,000 in energy use to pay that note off. And part of our contractual agreement is stating that you see the savings that allows you to pay the note. Do we have a? Yeah, I was going to say, let me, so if we were to say that using raw numbers, we have a $10 million project and we'll see, so that's what we need to obtain in financing to fund the project. We have 3 million that's gonna come from grant funding. So that knocks our actual cost to 7 million. What we're saying is over the course of 15 years would traditionally be the term. It could go 20. What we're saying is that you're going to recoup that savings and it's going to be guaranteed in the contract, which means that if you don't see the energy savings from the project, Verigy would be left liable for the difference. So maybe break it down further. So if we say that your annual exposure is $500,000, what we're saying is at the end of the year, if you didn't save $500,000, we would pay the difference. If you save 400,000, we would write a check to the county for 100,000 to make you whole. If you saved 550,000, you keep the extra savings. That's essentially it. So there's a very small number of projects that we can do this with. Solar, renewable energy, and geothermal are two projects that have very high returns on investment as far as energy consumption. So it allows you to essentially take on these projects without financial exposure. That help?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
But looking through all the information,
Mhm.
I haven't seen anywhere where it says what it costs us now traditionally with Xcel Energy for our expense.
Yeah.
So I mean, you kind of make it sound too good to be true. I guess that worries me a bit.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially, yeah, take this back over. Thank you. So essentially what happens is the next step of the process would be an engineered audit, or excuse me, an engineered design process that would actually put us in a position to fully ascertain your current cost and the savings opportunity. So essentially what we're able to do is outline annually what your expense is and what the predicted savings amount would be. Before we go to contract, we would have a very detailed analysis provided that would break out cost and savings specific to solar, specific to geothermal. Yeah, it's pretty, we don't have the information today just because we haven't had the resources to do a full study. When we get to that point, we're able to outline that in quite a bit of detail.
So, Supervisor Bjork, I can share a little bit of what you're asking, what we currently pay. Our current bills for really the three buildings that we're talking about, Judicial, Government Center, and the neighbors, is from an electric standpoint about $488,000 a year is what we budget for electricity. I can tell you that the Judicial Center is twice the amount as the Government Center, and it is about let's see, the gas bill for this building, you budget about $3,000 for this building and $45,000 for the Judicial Center. The gas bill for the Government Center is $3,000. The gas bill for the Judicial Center is $45,000. We don't use gas.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, but we use more electric. However, the electric used in this building is still about half of the electric that is used in the Judicial Center.
And this might shed a little more light on it. So this is the proposed solar system. It's a 1.8 megawatt system. It would offset currently 65% of the county's energy usage. So it's essentially taking 2/3 of the load that's currently being brought in from the utility and making it local. Absolutely. Yes.
Do you know how many panels that is, or does that, you just figure out how much energy we use, so you figure how many panels that we need?
Yeah, so essentially what we're looking at this point is the overall KWH that we need to produce. Um,
So
we
basically, that's already fixed in for your money that you've written down here.
correct, yes.
Okay.
So that is supplies and installation and warranty on the system.
And then after 25 years, do you get a discount on replacing these solar panels, or do you have to pay the full price?
So so after 25 years, they're not going to be um, they're not going to be defunct. They're just going to be operating at a lower efficiency. So we see a 1 to 2% degradation that we calculate in energy production annually. So when we get to 25 years, now we're talking about losing a quarter to a third of their optimal production. So hypothetically, you can maintain those panels in operation.
Forever?
Hypothetically, I mean,
Yeah.
at some point they're going to, because I mean, it's electrical, so you're going to have pieces of it that need to be retrofitted, but yeah, and what will probably be occurring at that point is that the production model, the amount of energy that these panels can produce, will have increased to a point where it'd make financial sense to replace them, that you would see enough payback.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir.
Solar panels generate a lot of discussion in where I live, in that proposed 2,000 acres are going to be installed, selling electricity to Xcel Energy. And the biggest complaint that I hear from my neighbors about solar panels, it ain't that they're not as pretty as a lake and hydroelectric, but there seems to be a lot of correct information or misinformation about the production of solar panels, and that the production of the products that make them work are offshore, China in particular. Uh, in your previous work with other counties and other municipalities, does this discussion come up that if we're going to tie into something, at least Xcel Energy is, I imagine, a United States company with United States workers,
Correct.
citizens. And if we go to solar panels now, we've lost that. Any comment at all on that?
So what I can tell you is specific to production models. Because of this program, we're seeing a significant ramp up in production in US made panels. There is an incentive for us to procure US product. There is. So one of the pieces that will go into a final cost analysis will be a cost efficiency of using US panels versus foreign. The federal government gives us a 10% additional credit if we use US panels. And it can vary from project to project. That seems to be about in line with the price difference that we're seeing on the market. So our last handful of projects, we've used US panels. They're becoming easier to obtain. A year ago, we couldn't obtain the amount of panels that we would need for a project like this. That's becoming less the case, but that would be something that, if that was important to the county, that's something we could make sure that we made a priority in our analysis.
You're getting to be really better than too good to be true if you're going to tell me we're going to use US built products.
Well, so what I can what I can say in all honesty is I've done this for 8 years, and we haven't had a program like this that we could utilize. It's a paradigm shift. It makes something like a performance contract possible. Um, in the past, the only time we could really use it was with lighting projects that would have a guaranteed payback that would be rather quick. With getting a 30 to 40% incentive from the federal government, it makes it plausible for counties and municipalities to take these type of projects on. 2 years ago, we couldn't come in and do the same thing. So it is it's definitely been beneficial for everyone involved to have this tool at our disposal. So
Excuse me, is there a time limit on the Inflation Reduction Act that they could all of a sudden take that money away?
so it's a couple things. So I mean, hypothetically, so this is passed by Congress, so it is I mean, it's in law, which means that we have a certain amount of money that can be utilized. Hypothetically, that money is available until it's all liquidated. Um, if there was a change in representation that wanted to see that no longer funded, there could be a chance with different people involved that it could go away. Yeah. With any grant program, as long as we break ground and we're in development, we're assured that we're going to get yeah. So, so the GEO system is kind of unique from the standpoint that, like I mentioned, you have active systems currently in this building and also the neighbor's building. Scott had referenced that there was capacity availability on this building's geosystem. Rory did a capacity study on the system and found that there was approximately 70 wells that could be reallocated for the judicial center, which creates a unique opportunity to save a pretty significant amount of money on the judicial center's project. So what we're looking at doing essentially, if you look at the barren land between the farm field and this building, that's where the current, well, yeah, the brownish part here on the east side of this building. That's where the current geo field is. What we're looking at doing is avoiding the 50 or 60-foot elevation change on the hill and piping around and connecting the two systems together. Yeah. Rory, if you're available, do you want to talk about some of the benefits of connecting the two systems?
Yes. If you connect these two systems, there are a couple of good things that happen. There's a lot of natural diversity in one building. And when you connect two buildings, as people move around in the buildings or come in and out of the buildings, for example, we'll just say heating. You may or may not need heat in different parts of the building. Or let's say the judicial center could need some extra cooling because of a large event or something like that, and there's not many people in the justice center. That load sharing and spreading these, the bore fields out, having two separate bore fields that are actually connected via, I would call it like a community heat pump system. It allows both bore fields to be used for both buildings. And it spreads it out in the ground as you separate the distance between the bore fields and things like that. You don't get huge swings in loop temperature. And so, whereas, let's say in August, you may have 90 degrees if you don't have them hooked together for your water temperature, your ground water temperature. It may only be 85. I've done this in a couple schools. One has an existing bore field, and we had done a complete retrofit to it and increased their energy efficiency. Give them 30% savings over what they were already saving. And we did the school next to it, and we connected the two. And the one that we had previously done added another 10%. And all we did was run some pipes to connect the two buildings together. So there's some very tangible benefits that there's a great deal of science being done on right now to explain. But it fundamentally breaks down into you have multiple bore fields separated by a distance. If you put this together and you did, let's say, one bore field for both buildings, it would not be as efficient as putting a bore field for each building and connecting them together. You might see some benefits from diversification and things like that. The other good thing about connecting them is, let's say there's a problem with an existing bore field or the new bore field. You have more leeway in the future if you have problems, if you have the multiple bore fields and they're connected. Additionally, in the existing building, if you factor that in, let's say, it's very cold in Wisconsin. You guys have a lot of, you have real winters up there. And let's say you need heat. If there's a small boiler connected for emergency, heating in one of the buildings, it can actually be used for both buildings. So it gives you, basically, you get the advantage of connecting the two buildings. So you have one or two places you can do your chemical treatment. You have diversification and load sharing, and you have some built-in redundancy when you do this.
Thanks, Roy. Appreciate it. Any questions on that? I know he's a little more technical. In case you couldn't tell, he's from Missouri, so.
Yeah, sorry, I started to go deep for a second. I'm like, wait a second, hold on, back up.
I think we got it. Thanks. So that's the geo side, and then the solar side. Essentially, we have quite a bit of flexibility as far as the location. This is kind of a placeholder right now. We're going to need about 5 to 5.5 acres for the solar field as it's designed today. It's a ground mount system that essentially you've probably seen them as you're driving around here. You have access to it. You have to maintain the ground around it. But we have the ability, as we get it further into development, to break this out. So if it becomes preferential, we can break this into 2 or 3 different locations. It doesn't really affect the bottom line cost of the project. So if, as we have discussions, if there's a preference to locate these in another place, we absolutely can do that. Basically, whatever we can do that's going to be the least impactful on the operation of the county is what we are aiming for. Being cognizant of a very heavily wooded hill that sits in the middle of the campus that we would try and avoid because it's going to block a lot of sun. So the way essentially this will work is a centralized system or a split system will pipe directly to the building meters. These will sit between your meter and the building. So when the building calls for energy, it's going to pull from the solar system first. If the solar system can't provide enough energy for the building, it will then flow through the utility energy to supplant the need. We currently haven't quoted a battery backup system or battery storage system. That is something that we can look at or add down the road very easily. So it is something that is also covered under the Inflation Reduction Act, but it is a pricey. It is a pricey project that is difficult to ascertain payback on. So, but. And that's why we're not offsetting 100% of your energy. Essentially, what we're doing here is taking off your base load. So the idea here is that we don't overproduce. If we do overproduce, it will go back to Xcel at your low market rate. So you have peak rate and low rate. Your low rate would be overnight during unpopular times for energy. So that usually is a half to a third of your peak rate. They'll provide that back to you as a credit if you are overproducing. But again, the goal is that we're setting a benchmark based on our energy study that will allow the county to fully recuperate the energy it's producing. So just kind of give you an idea of what a timeline would look like if you were to add it today to the capital improvement plan for next year. We would probably be looking at mid-November release for an RFQ, which we would plan on participating in, where you could qualify vendors to participate with a proposed submission deadline of mid-December. Essentially, the first step would be to find qualified vendors. So we can give you other vendors that would be qualified to provide the similar service. So if you were to select a company by December, it would be about a 2-month process for us to do a full energy audit. That's typically coming on site with multiple engineers and doing a deep dive into the county facilities, doing things like one of the things that Rory noticed on her site visit is that the Judicial Center has piping that's currently in good spec that could be reutilized. That was a pretty substantial amount of cost in our original pricing proposal. If it turns out that that is something that we can do, that would lower the price of the project considerably. Those are the type of things that we're able to ascertain during a full engineering audit. So that's about a 2-month process. At that point, we could come back to you with specific costs of the project and then the savings guarantees that would be provided with the project. And it was thinking about a 6-month construction period, and that would be procurement, subcontractor, vetting and contracting, and then installation. What we try to do as much as possible, working with people like Scott, is find local contractors to work with for the installation piece. We're ultimately the ones that are going to be liable for the project, but we'd like to have local help put the project in place. So, but if there is any questions or concerns, that all comes back to us, and we would manage those folks. So that's that is kind of it. Yeah. Any questions? Yeah, absolutely.
Now that ground thermal, you're not gonna add another space to it, that's just connecting to that?
No, so we need, so right now, the existing system has about was 140 wells, 140, 150 wells. We think that we can leverage about 60 or 70 of those. We're going to need another 100 to 110 for the judicial center. So we need a bigger system for the judicial center for a number of reasons: the occupancy, the hours of operation. It requires more offsetting. So we will be putting a new field in, and that was right here.
And how deep does them wells go?
Rory?
Really, I think I was looking at 400-foot bores for this. You can go 2, 3, 4, 500 feet pretty easily. 600 feet carefully. That's about as deep as I would recommend going. I know out on the East Coast they've been experimenting with 700 feet plus, but you know, the deeper you go in the earth, the warmer the earth gets. So there is a point, depending upon how thick the crust is, that the temperature actually starts to rise.
Thank you.
Basically, what we're trying to do, we're trying to do with the geosystem, is cool the building and store the heat in the ground for the winter. That's the shortest description of what geothermal really does. You know, we're trying to take all this summer heat that we have and store it in the ground, and then when winter hits, we pull it back out of the ground.
And so you're kind of the management, you don't actually do the construction and,
So we have
Or
the
the
ability
financing.
to, it's a hybrid approach. So we project manage and we'll be on site during the entire process. Depending on our internal resources that are available, we'll ascertain what we subcontract and what we contract internally.
and so you are kind of the financing.
So no, so we're the
No?
so
You're the engineering, okay.
we're the engineering and the design. Yeah,
Okay.
absolutely.
So how is this performance? That's kind of the financing, but in a way, right? The savings, performance contracting.
Yeah, and I should probably take a step back. This would have probably been helpful at the very beginning of the conversation. So Verigy is an energy services company that specifically works with public entities. So our business is working with municipalities, counties, universities, and K-12 institutions. The reason we do it is because this financing model, this procurement model, works for organizations that aren't saving tremendous amounts of capital to pay for future projects. What we're able to do is say, instead of you waiting to recoup the savings to actually do a project, what we can do is essentially front the savings to pay for the project on the front end. So essentially, we're providing a guarantee on top of a design build firm to do these projects. And again, it's very specific to a publicly financed entity that again has fewer options of procurement. The fact of the matter is, if you did this project, whether it was with us or with bolt, you're going to see the same amount of savings. It's just that a traditional general contractor won't guarantee the savings in the process. So it allows you to procure through performance contracting and have something in writing that says that you won't be liable if something unforeseen happened.
And I would
Yeah.
outline, so the state statutes, when he talks about performance contracting, that is a state statute, it is a defined thing.
Yes.
Which starts with working with a company like Verigy to essentially do exactly what they've done so far, is to do a study and determine if this is something that's possible. And then in his timeline, he talked about doing an RFQ, once again, another requirement of that process, which could result in Verigy not doing this going forward. So,
Right. So just because of the nature of the business and our customers, we provide services at no charge to get to this point for municipalities and counties.
Yep.
The idea is that there's an intrinsic benefit for us to have the knowledge of an entity going into an RFP or RFQ that makes it worthwhile to make that investment on the front end. But yes, we are always at risk if we can't perform to.
and then they're required to be bonded and go through all of these types of qualifications in order to qualify for a performance contract.
Yeah,
So-
we do.
We are NIESCO certified, and what that means is that it's basically the national energy services companies. They have set standards that we have to follow in how we do our job, how we do our engineering, how we model the buildings and write our energy guarantees. Not all energy service companies are NIESCO certified, but Verigy is, and that's something that we work very hard to maintain. One of the things that, for example, I would be doing on the Judicial Center is I would be doing a very, very detailed energy model of it and your space usages and things like that to both model the existing building. And I have to get very close with the existing building with my model before I can even start to model another system.
Yeah, there's most likely hundreds of companies that provide energy resources in construction for entities. There's only 12 organizations that are accredited through the national organization to provide the services, which means that their projects are audited. They understand our model for finding savings, in that if there is an issue, that the entities are made whole, that they're not left in a precarious position because something wasn't seen through. So,
And it's a little early in the process, but one of the things that sets Verigy apart from other companies is when, if we're selected for an RFQ and we put a design together that you all are happy with, and we come back with a price, that is the price for that system. If we missed something, we pay for it. You don't. We're not going to come back to you and say, hey, you had 3 units that we missed, and it's going to require XYZ and it's going to cost another $100,000. We don't do that. Part of our process that we go through is spend the time on the front end to make sure we have all of those snakes and pitfalls that a more traditional approach would leave you open to change orders.
right. So yeah, so we're not able to request change orders once we're under contract. That's just part of this model.
If I might.
Yep. Go ahead, Kelly.
One of the reasons that This is statutorily a different structure. This type of contract is because the state is, and it's a little bit easier for us to do this kind of financing is because the state is interested in incentivizing public entities to do this kind of project. So it's a slightly easier borrowing process, among other things.
And the payback needs to be a certain amount according to the state, is that
So, exactly, so,
15 years?
so we have 20 years
20.
to make the payback. And that's something that's discussed as we go through the process of how long you want to finance it for. This one will probably need about 20 years because it's a lot of infrastructure that we need to put in. But exactly, we need to get to the guaranteed amount within that period of financing.
And so the geothermal alone doesn't provide enough savings. That's why it's the
Correct.
combination.
Yeah, so I would speculate that the solar setup will pay back in 10 to 12 years. And that will let us leverage the savings to pay for the geo system.
And the geo systems, they can pay for themselves. They generally cash flow around 15 years just by themselves. So for us to hit a 20-year payback is actually pretty easy. Some of the other states, we have a 15-year window to hit that number.
Well, and I think we have a unique opportunity at this point, since we're going to have to replace the heating and cooling system on the judicial center, no matter what. This gives us an opportunity to do it at a much lower effective cost to the county.
And another advantage of a geo system is, for example, these bore fields, they're normally warranted for 50 years, and they have a life expectancy of at least 100 years. And for like water source heat pumps, the equipment life cycle is 25 years versus 15-year, which is a traditional air source system. So the equipment lasts a lot longer as well. And part of what, in the next steps that we would be doing is also putting a life cycle cost analysis, comparing an existing system that you have, if you went ahead and replaced it, how much you would spend over 20 years or 30 years versus a geo system. 15 years, people may or may not replace their airside equipment, but that is generally the point where they're going to have to start thinking about it. And they're going to have to do something with a few years, or they're really going to have a great deal of operational and maintenance spend. And once you have this geo infrastructure in, then it's just replacing the units. It's not redoing all the piping. It's not drilling another bore field or anything like that. So, at 25 or 30 years, when you decide you need to replace the water source heat pumps, it's just the water source heat pumps, which is a much smaller spend.
Anyone have, oh, yeah, go ahead.
Go ahead.
So that in 20 years, we can divide our $1 million payment, you're saying, or we have to?
So at 20 years, you're going to have essentially everything still in place. You're still going to be saving money from the infrastructure changes. You just won't be paying for it any longer. It will be paid off at that point. So the savings will continue in perpetuity. What Rory's saying is that unlike a traditional HVAC system, you're not replacing major components every 15, 20, 25 years. Now you're essentially replacing modular pump units because you already have a bore field in place. The expense essentially has been sunk, and now your operational costs are reduced dramatically. if any thoughts or questions come up, obviously we covered a lot today. My contact information is in the packets. Feel free, give me a shout, shoot me an email. I'm happy to field any questions that you might think of.
Thank you so much.
Thank
This was
you.
very informative.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you all.
All right. So any other thoughts? Yeah. Super.
Well, when I asked the question, give a idea of what we're gonna do, this was pretty quick.
Pardon?
For having someone to do this.
Oh.
I thought that's abnormal.
Things are moving. All right, so I'm moving along the agenda to 6B, the Fair Board report.
Well, as you all know, the fair was last month already. Hopefully you had a chance to attend. We added a lot of new things. The buildings were, especially the exhibit hall, we revamped the whole thing and the way that looked. And Larry could probably fill you in a little bit more because he was in that building a lot more than I was, but a lot of positive comments from the vendors. Nobody was hidden behind a wall or behind a row of curtains this year. So and you couldn't really easily walk from one door to the other without cutting through some of the exhibits, which that was my intent. And I think it worked out really well. So we did hear some positive things there. If you were also there, you noticed that we had a lot more machinery, exhibits. And the unfortunate thing is you probably noticed the pony ride wasn't there. And he just didn't show up this year. So I had called on Tuesday and tried to find out what happened. And I talked to him in April, first part of April, and he never ever filled out his paperwork ahead of time. He always filled it out and brought it because he travels a circuit around. And so I called on Tuesday and his phone was disconnected. So I Googled him and here he passed away on April 21st. So I'm like, I just talked to him like 2 weeks before. He just died suddenly. So obviously I hadn't checked on him since April because that's just the way Dan worked. Yeah, and so we didn't have a pony ride, which I think some kids were disappointed in, but there was a lot of other things to see and do. I think we were successful. We had the fair board itself got together and the Saturday before set up, and we moved a lot of stuff, and then we were there that week before and moved a lot of stuff out of the buildings to try to get ready for setup night on Thursday night. And that kind of helped Scott's staff out a little bit too, where we did a lot of that ahead of time because Scott was a little shorthanded. No fault of his own, but these guys worked really hard. Ron built us some new ticket booths. They're not completely done, but we had some positive feedback for that. The main purpose was to keep it so that they felt safer, and they just didn't have a bin with all of their stuff sitting on the blacktop out there. They had a place that they could store their stuff. So Ron promises he's going to finish them over the winter. So yeah, so well, they'll look much better next year, but at least they were usable this year. So all in all, I think it was great. We had our open beef show was up in numbers. Our entries were all up in numbers. And we just had a great market sale. I didn't bring the numbers with, but it broke the record again. It went over 300,000 this year. So some awesome results with the market sale. So if anybody has any questions.
On one report that I received, Deb, from one of the vendors, well, Luke Wilsey, a board member, he says, well, I sold 2 more, so it was worth our time being there. So I guess, if you're going to take all the time and expense and labor to move all that stuff in, it's nice to have a little reward and selling a couple more, I think made him very happy.
Well, cool. We were glad to have them back, so,
The weather was lovely.
yes. Very nice. It was a little warm on Sunday, but, you know, we made it through with no rain and, nobody can complain about the weather, so. After last year, it was, much improved. So,
Any other questions? All right, thanks a lot. It was great.
And we're gonna do it again next year too.
You're already planning, right? For- Right. So facilities and parks report.
All right. So the fair was the big part of facilities as well, with the week of setup, the week working the fair, and then the week of tear down. My staff was pretty busy with that. And prior to the setup week, they were doing stuff at the rec park, also getting ready for the fair. One of the things that was discussed with the fair board is the problems with some electrical that is in Hog Barn and Coverall building currently. One has 40 amp service, the other one has 60 amp service, and with all the power demands during the fair, ends up tripping breakers. So I'm currently working with Bear Valley Electric, and Xcel Energy has a program that they pay back half of the project of upgrading some electrical. So I'm getting the details on that. Once I have all the details, I'll bring that forward and let you know what's going on. But that would upgrade some electrical there, make things nicer for the rec park for the fair. Working on that. Otherwise, staff have been busy working on other projects, cleaning out. We took some time and cleaned out a lot of stuff in buildings at the rec park, the old highway shop buildings and the grandstand. Cleaned a lot of that stuff out of there. Stuff that's been in there stored for a lot of years hasn't been used. There were lots of things. But there was things that needed to go, and there's other stuff that I'll be selling off that does have some monetary value. So we can get that stuff moved. It makes more room, makes the buildings easier to get ready for the fair, provides storage for things that we need storage space for. And otherwise, the guys have been filling in with moving office furniture and stuff. Human Services definitely keeps us busy with office moves when they're juggling staff around. And then we've been taking the opportunity to get some of the rooms repainted when they get moved, patch holes in walls and repaint them and upgrade some of those to the newer gray color that is on second floor. So some of the staff are pretty excited about that, with getting that updated color. Working on that. Seasonal staff have been keeping all the lawns mowed. They've been working really hard doing all that. And the other guys have filled in when needed. Facilities fleet is running well. Things are going on, no problems there. I did not send out the financial report, but I gave it to you guys with your agenda, I believe there. So, things are on track with the budget, so nothing out of whack there. Did get a couple of projects moving forward. One is the pressure washing of the Judicial Center and the Government Center. The sandstone is in need of being cleaned up and to get it brightened up and looking better. Got a few bids on that. One is definitely in price range where we need, where it's under our budgeted amount, considerably under budgeted amount. So working with trying to getting the scope of work details from that vendor so that we can get it moving forward. The other one is the project of the old highway shop buildings at the rec park. The gray paint is peeling off on them. there as well. I got two bids on that, and one of the bids is considerably lower than what is budgeted. So that's falling into one of the same situations. So working on getting that scope of work from that contractor also, so that we can make sure it's gonna go forward without a hitch and get those projects done. And then the other project that I'll be putting out there to get bids on is for getting the restroom facility built at Monoman Park. So moving forward on that stuff. Otherwise, the financials are looking right on track. And the energy situation, you know, we've been working, Dan's been working hard on this stuff with Verigy, and I've been putting in input as needed and working on that. So, you know where that's at, we're moving forward. Aside from that, that is about what I have for a report for this month. Any questions?
You know that gray building where the old county shop? Now, back in the day, how did they heat that place up? Because there's basically, that's the same it looked as it does now, right? So there
Yep.
must have been a lot of heat loss in that place.
So there's a big boiler in the basement of the building that's at the corner of Main and 17th. The boiler is still there, obviously been decommissioned, but a huge boiler. And so steam would go up, and there are heaters that are hanging from the ceiling yet that are steam heaters. And that's how that building was heated.
Okay, I just wondered about that. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thanks, Scott. So then we go on to 6D. So the long-term facilities plan, is that our green?
This green.
Our green?
This green. It's the whole.
That's the whole folder.
This.
Yeah.
This reminds me of an accounting ledger from a long time ago.
Yeah, so Scott and I had kind of met around the putting together this long-term plan, and Dustin is on the call too, because highway factors greatly into this. So if you're familiar, the highway facilities do not fall under the facilities committee, they fall under highway. That being said, work that needs to be done on facilities countywide, it all uses the same budget. So it's kind of important for the two groups to be able to work together to know about what the facilities committee is up to and what the highway committee is up to. You happen to have the chair of the highway committee on the facilities committee, which is useful in that regard. But so what we put together here, the green folder that you have has a document that we've been putting together that outlines every facility with structures that the county has. I didn't get pictures of everything, but I for some of them that I didn't get out to get some pictures of, I just kind of took an overhead view from the map so that you can kind of get a breakdown of what that did. But then between Scott and Dustin, we've kind of, gave you a little summary of what each of those buildings is, what it's used for. And then there's a kind of a building status section below each. Not all of them have them. Some of them don't have a building status little section under them, but that kind of explains, some of the work that we know is going to need to be done in the future, or different needs that have been expressed by the different departments that utilize those specific areas. So just to give you an idea of what everything is, where it is, and where it is it's structurally, and and a lot of building this document came out of the fact of me having conversations with Scott and him telling me about all of these things and me having no idea that they existed or what they were. And so I started digging into that and said, hey, you know what? I bet I'm not alone. So we kind of put this together in hopes that this can continue to be updated year in and year out and inform all of our supervisors of all of the facilities that we have and what goes on in them. The large green spreadsheet is, don't hold us to any of the numbers. But it is intended to kind of outline as you look out. You'll see that it's kind of broken down to show you the next 10 years, and then there's like that 11 to 20 years, and that 21 to 30 year is just summed up in like one column. But this is intended to just help you understand all of the foreseeable costs that are going to happen in the future. So this kind of came as we talk about having to replace the HVAC system in the judicial center. That's an expected thing that we know is going to happen after so many years. We just talked about the lifespan of a geosystem versus all of these things. Like, we know that a roof is probably a 20, 25-year roof. So we can expect to have to replace that many years later. So you see that in the NDC out in 2033. NDC was built in 2013. 20 years later, you're going to have to start thinking about replacing roofs on those structures. So let's have that in the back of our mind as we're doing that, and as we're talking about new highway facilities and different things like that. As you get into the highway, you'll see some of the work that Cedar Corp did as they were investigating the new expansion plans for the highway department, is also looking at some of those shops out throughout the county. So you'll see those kind of broken down and some of the expenses that are expected to happen in those particular areas. So I don't think there's really any work here. This is really just a whole lot of information that you can take home and look at and think about, and help that factor in as you make the decisions about the projects that need to be done in the future.
This is a fantastic document and a great resource. That's just really great work. I love this piece of data.
Yes, and the green, like, yes. So whoever comes on to facilities should get one of these, definitely.
I was just telling Jason from Verigy, I had his folder that he gave you, and I was holding on to that as I printed out the 23 pages of this, and I said, I need to put that in a folder. So I ran to Walmart this afternoon and bought green folders to put those in.
Yeah.
So, it's school shopping season, so they're right up front. So yeah. And like I say, any feedback, if there's anything in there that you know is false, Chris was laughing at me and Scott was too, because as I was writing things, I'd, write, this is the big building at the fairgrounds and it's about 25 square feet and it was built in 1900. That was just me writing things out saying I need to fill in that. And some of that was caught in editing. So if you notice those, or if there's any additional information that you think would be helpful about those facilities that isn't included, let us know. We can update that, because like I said, in the future, we would plan on doing it again. Is there one in there?
The building might be more than 12 square feet.
Yeah, see?
That
That was the one I didn't get the number on. That was actually the one that Chris caught. I did get the year on it though. So.
My grandson would love
So, like I said, mainly just provided as a resource.
An overarching map too. Scott provided us with one with
Yes.
the parks.
Yes, yeah.
Which was
aware-
very helpful.
I was gonna put that together as I was gonna go take pictures of everything, and then I realized it's probably a 2-day project. It really is. To drive around and take pictures of every structure is probably 2 days. You'd have to drive fast, and you can't get to Pine View Park right now because the highway department is repairing the road, which is what I learned when I went to go take pictures of Pine View Park.
Having been in your position, in that position as a journalist, yes. You can't do it in one day. I tried.
And I'm guessing the 11 million that we've been talking about would be split into HVAC and solar.
Yeah, I
somewhere.
didn't have a solar one, so
Fine.
I just put that in there so that it would kind
As
of
a
fall into
placeholder.
to the bottom. And then we do have the a round number for the request that the sheriff had made for storage is included in there, and the highway building is also on here, right, Dustin? Yeah. So obviously, those are not anything that anybody has ever determined is gonna happen or what they are. They're just, we wanted to have a number in there to give you a feel that that's a thing. So,
Then you need the heat pump somewhere down here if we go with geothermal, right?
right, well, yeah, so I mean, as you talk about even this, this building, which it had geothermal put in 2013 as well, right? I feel like everything is 2013.
Yeah, this building was 2014.
Okay,
So they did the neighbors in 2013. They actually moved into the neighbors October of 2013. So it was later in the year, and then vacated this building. And then in 2014, they started the remodel construction on this building.
right, so you start to, as we look at a 10-year life cycle, we're looking into the 20th year of this building, which still seems brand new. Upstairs at least, so.
Hey, did they, put in a wash rack for the highway, or is that still talked about?
The wash bay is included in the plans for the new building. at
Okay.
Highway.
How do you feel about this, Scott?
It's a lot. You put it all together in a spreadsheet and look at it, it's a lot. Day to day, you take things as they come, and when you put it all together in say a 10-year like this, it can be overwhelming.
Yeah, I was talking to Chris, and I'd be curious, and this would require, I think, me or somebody to go out to all the parks, is how many roofs are in the county? Right.
A lot.
Yeah.
Starting with your pavilions, restrooms at the parks, all that stuff, and then working on buildings, and there's a lot of roofs.
There's
Yeah.
probably 8 of them in Caddy Woodlawn.
Yeah, at least, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I started to see. I'm like, wow,
Mhm.
you could do a roof every year, or 3.
Yeah.
So, 3 roofs every year.
The nice part about Caddy is some of them are small,
Yeah.
aside from the house.
Yep.
The other ones are small.
Any other questions? Thoughts? Something to mull over.
Very good.
Yeah, this is amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much. All right, so considerations for action. So I think our next are to look at the budgets requests for facilities. All right. Does everyone have the facilities budget?
Yeah, I had Mercedes send it out,
Yeah.
the facilities and parks, budget request for 2025. And then also I had her send out the one for the fair. So we look at facilities and parks first.
Yes. It might be, yes. Yes, I have those up. Do you have anything to point out or,
Nothing real specific, I guess, to point out. Well, one of the things that I have been checking into with Patty Isaacson is, insurance costs. Insurance costs were up considerable for, I think it was Central Transportation for the fleet vehicles. And so questioning her, the liability insurance is, going from budgeting from 4,000 to 9,500. So I'm just finding out, working with her to find out how accurate that number is. Is in 2024 here, we were charged the 9,500, and had 4,000 budgeted. So, it throws up a red flag to check into it and see and say, hey, we've got this many fleet vehicles. One thing to look at is that, so we had, X number of vehicles when we went into COVID. We had some fleet vehicles that we owned that we did sell off when we came into COVID because people weren't traveling, people weren't going anywhere. So we backed off on those. And so since then, once things started ramping up after COVID, getting going again, people traveling, going out and providing services, we added more vehicles to the fleet, through leasing. And I don't know that the insurance, liability insurance went up, should have gone up that high with adding vehicles. We've added the two back into the fleet that we had sold off, and then we added one more. So 3 vehicles adding on there shouldn't double the insurance. So that's why the question out there. So that's one of those things that's up in the air yet, but, right at this point, it's in the budget for 9,500 for those. I think if there was anything else, your typical increases in costs on some of the stuff across the board there. But nothing major that stands out.
so, do we have something with energy costs that we don't have any increase expected for next year? They seem to go up every year at my house. So,
They seem to go up quite a bit. The energy costs for each building, I have kept them pretty close to the same because looking at past years that we've come close or a little below, we've been all right. So I think those numbers are all right for our energy right now.
then was, like salary increases figured in, it looks like.
Yep, that's, so finance and HR does the salaries and fringe and all that, and I don't get to take care of any of that. They handle that situation.
Just wanted to make sure that's
Yeah.
what
Yep.
was causing that. Okay. And then I think there was just increases in the custodial, right? In some of the departments.
I did take and combine some of the custodial, so what I did was took where we had it separated from custodial supplies and floor mats. So I took the floor mat cost and put it into the custodial supplies, because to me, it didn't make sense to have the floor mats separated out. For whatever reason, at one point, they were separated out. I don't think it needs to be. If you wanted to in SAP, you could separate everything out down very detailed if you wanted to. I don't think it's absolutely necessary to do that, so. I opted to move those together.
May I? Okay, so I took a look this afternoon at Scott's budget as well. I would say that most of his operations costs are nominal changes, a few $100s here, a few $100s there. The biggest increases were in the central fleet, like you said, 500 or $500,000, $5,000 increased fuel, some increased lease costs, and then the liability insurance. So essentially his operations stay the same. His, the unmet need portion of Scott's budget is just under $40,000. His salary and fringe increases alone were 87,000. So a portion of those was absorbed in other adjustments and other points in the budget. So, and in the application of what he has historically received in levy. So, it's pretty much outside of salary and fringe a zero increase.
And as a note there with the central fleet for the fuel costs, we do charge back grants for some of the departments, so we do recoup some of that.
Scott, a question I had, and maybe this doesn't make any difference, but when you replace vehicles, and I'm saying the only one that I'm aware of, is the 90 Dodge that was sold for what, $5,000 or $6,000 or something like that, and then it's replaced with an F-450. The value of the F-450 versus the value of the Dodge and maybe any other things, as things become more expensive, are they more expensive to insure?
Yes, they would be. This situation where the central transportation increase in insurance, the replacement of that truck is not included in that because that's in a different place. But yes, as things increase in value, the insurance must increase on them as well. Yeah.
Do we need a motion
Yes.
to approve?
move that we approve the facilities and park budget. I move we approve the budget for the parks and facilities. I would second that.
Any further discussion? Otherwise, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that passes. So it goes on. Thank you. And then the fair budget.
Mine didn't change a lot, and so I actually based it off of the 2022 fair, because this is always due before the current year fairs happened. Excuse me. I didn't change a lot of information on here. I know somebody asked me about land rental. We do not rent land. It should be like our tents and equipment, and I've asked to have that changed, but so far it still says land. So we don't rent land, because they were wondering where we were, one of the supervisors actually asked me if we rent land, and I go, no. Or pay rent, and I said, nope. But anyway, so I'll see if we can get that switched again. I'll ask again. But like Scott said, garbage, I did increase that last year, but I'm not sure I haven't gotten the bill yet for this year. That took a big jump last year. And of course, when we're talking garbage, it's also talking the manure removal and so forth. So it's just not garbage that we generate. It's all of the manure that comes out of the barns and stuff. So that, I left it the same. I'm hoping it doesn't go up too much, but otherwise it's pretty much the same as last year. Just a couple little increases based on rising costs.
And so the contractual and consulting fees or services,
That includes, any of our, like the one that's under the, for Fair Board Administration on the first section there, under there, it's 30,000. That's including like Scott's staff, because we pay their salary and
Okay.
we pay their wages and their fringe benefits.
So that's the grounds too for.
Yeah, and the grounds is all of the other things that, we contract for, like, that we don't rent, but we, like the sound, well, it's not the tents, but anything else that we use out there, like our, well, free stage, if we have to rent a free stage, we've been lucky and borrowed one the last couple of years, but, and then under the grandstand, of course, that's the grandstand X. So, but it's like radios, like we get the two-way radios. What else do we use all the time? It's all those little things that I have on my checklist that add up.
Yeah, like the radios, the golf
Yep,
carts,
the laptop that we
the
rent.
laptops,
Yep.
stuff like that.
Golf carts, yep. Part of the lift, we rented it for a longer period because Scott's using it for tree cleanup. Unfortunately, we're losing some trees. We need to get planting out there. So,
Anyone have any questions?
Is there any levy that actually goes for the fair board? Or- No.
not
no.
anymore.
Okay,
Nope.
that's fine.
I wish there was.
Yeah.
We are pretty much all voluntary. Well, these guys know how much time I put in, like up to the fair that week. It's like, I work a lot of 12-hour days for free. So,
I'd like to ask Deb if, one of the biggest, hurdles that, fairs have to, get over right now is the carnivals and the lack of carnivals. And, I thought that they jumped their prices pretty good this year. I don't spend much time down the carnival, but I mean, if there is something down the road that could really come up and bite you, it's going to be what it might cost to have a carnival.
yeah, it's really, really become a problem. And right now, there's still only 49 representatives that have signed on to sponsor that, bill that they're trying to get sponsored so that they will be able to get foreign workers easier. And a lot of their foreign workers come from Europe, not so much like where you think the Mexicans and so forth. I mean, they do get some of those, but a lot of them, and they have a separate visa. Carnival workers have a separate visa than normal immigrants that come here to work. I'm not sure if I'm picking my words just right, but, so after, that's kind of all on hold right now, working on that bill because of the elections and different things. Nobody wants to spend any time to talk to, or don't have time to talk to anybody, but we're still in the background pushing with that and trying to get that going. But, there is a lot of carnivals that have gone out of business. It's like dropped 50%. Pretty much in the Midwest area, that they're not out there anymore. And I do know that there's at least one, probably two, that'll be going out of business this year. The owners are retiring, and there's not a lot of people that are willing to take on that life. And yes, they did really jump their prices this year for armbands, and it reflected in our income that we earned from the carnival. It was down, and we heard it from people that with the economy the way it is, they just couldn't afford to buy their kids wristbands this year. So it's like this revolving circle.
Have there been any county fairs that have cut out a carnival?
There was a couple this year that were not able to get one because there's both of those county fairs went out of business and there just wasn't anybody to take it over. So they did like the bouncy houses, and, Eau Claire does not have one. They've never had a carnival. But I know they struggle too, just to make things work for them too. So, and those rides are, we had the carnival that we had the one new ride this year, the Extreme. Did you go on it, Ron? You said you were going to. Yeah, but that's like $1.5 million ride. So, you know, in addition to paying their liability insurance, which is really high, you know, on those rides and the inspections and, you know, it's tough for the carnivals right now.
And a lot of those rides are European built.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, they're really, you know, would like to have some representation from the people that construct
Right,
those rides, you know, part of their organization.
right. So, yeah, but that's an ongoing problem and I don't look for that to be going away anytime soon.
Yep, we do.
I move we approve the 2025 fair budget proposal.
A second.
All right. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, so that passes on. All right, so 8C, amend the 2025 capital improvements plan to include energy project. So that we need to make a motion to like pass along the 11 million.
Yeah, so I think we had talked about this before. It was like, what are the next steps forward? And Chris and I talked about that, and well, I don't think anybody ever wrote a book about what what the next steps forward are. But you know, the typical process that we would have to do a project like this would be to include it in the capital improvement plan, which then gets adopted by the board and then is used to create the budget. So the plan that we kind of came up with is that we would have the facilities committee request to amend the 25 capital improvement project list. That would then go off to executive and then the full board to then accept the change. And then that would become part of the kind of the planning process for the 25 budget.
And it would be, so it wouldn't be part of borrowing, or it would be this new like performance.
So, you know, the capital improvement plan was adopted, 2 months ago or something like that. And we go through it, we approve the projects, and then we approve a plan of how we're going to fund that. So that process would kind of have to start, well, not really start again, but as you have this additional project, the executive committee would then look at this amendment and then kind of come up with a recommendation of how we would go about funding that. And then that would get approved. Ultimately, choosing to borrow or do something like that is ultimately decided as part of the budget, but it just kind of a first step of approving that that's how you want to go forward. So,
Yeah.
yes. Yep.
Did we ever have a cost on what it was gonna cost to replace the HVAC system in the judicial center? I mean, I see numbers, but I can't remember.
Yeah, so we had proposal as we looked at just doing geothermal in the judicial center without doing solar. That was about $4.5 million project that had a little over, I don't think it actually paid itself off in 25 years through a lot of that planning, but it ultimately was going to, in the end of 25 years, cost about $1 million.
So we don't have any cost on what it would be just to replace what we have without geothermal or anything like that. That's, I guess, my question, or I'm just curious.
No,
To replace what we have with what we have.
So right at this point, replacing what we have would be tough to figure out because there are a number of items that are getting obsolete.
Right.
So, and there are, controls in the jail system that are pneumatic.
Mhm.
They're not even electronic yet, they're still pneumatic. So that was one of the things I put into capital improvements a few years back, for replacing controls. That has been carried forward. Because digging into this further, looking to where we're gonna go, it didn't make sense to go ahead with that project, replace controls until we know where we're going. Same thing with replacing air handlers. There's been, a couple of years that there's been 100,000 in capital improvements that's already been approved, but has not been spent. So there's money from controls, there's money from the air handlers that has been improved in capital improvements, and has been carried forward. But as far as replacing what is there, it's not something to figure out real easily. You could figure out what it is to replace the boilers, because you have two boilers that are there. You'd replace those with smaller, high efficiency boilers. You have a chiller there that coming up for replacement, that'd probably be $400,000, something like that. Start looking at that stuff. Then you're still replacing what you have and staying with that same system. You're looking at right like it is right now. Currently now, the boilers are running, they're hydronic, which to anybody in this room, it's not gonna make sense. Why are we burning gas to heat water, to go through the building, to cool down, or to warm up what the chiller is cooling down? But that's how that system works. Your chiller's running cooling, your boilers are running warming. They're fighting each other.
So Rory explained that to me when they were here doing their study. Not only is the chiller chilling, it's over chilling. It's bringing it down to the air down to like 50 some degrees. And then the warming process is how the humidity is pulled out of it. So we're overcooling things, heating them back up in order to cool our buildings.
So anybody familiar with the old government center downtown Menominee, exactly the same way. We had a chiller down there that we ran well water through. That chiller chilled things down and it would over chill. And then you had two boilers running that would heat things back up. They fight each other, and that's running all summer long. And then you got those boilers are heating in the wintertime. Well, they're running full bore heating that water to give you all your heat. So you're burning gas all year round.
No, I just wanted to, it's an $8 million project, but if it's gonna be 2 million just to replace what we might have, it's really not an $8 million project, is what I'm trying to get to. I'm all in favor of the
So,
system.
I
I'm just
think-
kinda curious.
I think in conversations with probably Rory and Jason from Verigy is that to replace the existing system would probably end up costing more than what that Geo system would cost to install.
Yeah.
Sure, hop on a mic. There, Jason's probably got some more insight for you.
Yeah, so essentially, well, first of all, part of the process and the next step will be to do a full cost analysis, and that will entail description of a direct replacement cost versus a geothermal cost. So you will see that information. Traditionally speaking, we were looking at about a 20% premium for a one-to-one replacement from a traditional HVAC to a geothermal system. When we get the Inflation Reduction Act credit, it basically flips it. We're going to be plus 15, 20%. So the net install cost will actually be lower than a full retrofit of the existing system, but we'll be able to display that in real dollars. So if you got, when we come back with the engineered analysis, if you said, we want to replace with a traditional HVAC system, you would have the opportunity to do that. But again, you'll be able to make that decision with all the information provided.
We need to break this into two pieces?
No.
No, we can just do one
That's it.
HVAC, solar.
I move to amend the 2025 CIP to include the energy project as proposed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so that passes. So that will go to the executive committee next.
Yeah.
All right. So our next meeting is September 25th at 2020, or at 6 PM in this room. All right, so we are adjourned at 7:49.